if it's said that Lloyd Waddy is the father of Australia's constitutional monarchy, are you the grandfather?
Well, sadly, I have 3 sons, but I'm not yet a grandfather. I'm very happy to accept any assignation in relation to the ACM movement. All of us here have done so much for it. It's such a significant and important movement, and if we don't do it, if the people here don't get behind the support for the conservation of what is good in this country, it will fall away.
One of the things that we decided was that what we needed was to know the presidents of all the branches of the New South Wales, every division of the Liberal Party, and the same with the Nationals, because we thought through them we could have a message circulated inviting those people, if they were interested, to come and join us. And we decided to contact the Liberal Party to get those addresses. And we did say at the time, look, we have no objection to your also offering the same to the Republican movement. That would be a matter for you and not for us. And we came to see you. You were no longer president. We came to see you because we found that the administration of the Liberal Party refused to even hand over that information. Why do you think that the Liberal Party took that position?
Well, I think this was in about 1999, just in anticipation of the referendum, David, and I was no longer the president of the party at that time. I did speak to the state director, and the position he took, and I'd have to say it was politically the correct decision, was that the names of the executives of each of the branches was confidential and private. And that although there was no, that both sides of the record couldn't have it, and neither could ACM. I think he was influenced by 1 or 2 people who were anti the ACM profile, but nonetheless, I think it's fair to say that the answer was strictly correct. And we have Nick Minchin over here who may have a different view about that, but because Nick was an outstanding political administrator. But what I did say to David was this, that we can't rely upon any other political movement or any other movement to uphold the values and the institution that is our Constitution. It has to be, the ACM has to run its own race, it has to be its own support base, and it has to have its own people to drive that continuing support for the maintenance of our Constitution. Because the political process, apart from being unwieldy, was also, with respect, unreliable. Because one moment you might find as head of the Liberal Party somebody who is strongly for, the next moment it might be someone strongly against and will work against the very people they were supposed to be supporting. And the same with the Labor Party. So I think the answer to the question was, strictly we can't have it, but it does mean that the ACM has to redouble its efforts. And thanks to people like David, Tony Abbott, Kerry Jones and others, that's exactly what happened.
Well, that did happen because by the referendum we had 55 to 60,000 people on our books, which was quite an effective force in the country. And that was obviously one of the reasons why the campaign went so well. I understand the ARM didn't have that. What they did for the actual need to service booths during the referendum was to ring up the Labor Party and ask the Labor Party to send people to the booths to do the manning there. And many of them weren't that enthusiastic. We certainly had people who were enthusiastic. The next question relates to your being member for Wentworth. You were challenged for a pre-selection by Malcolm Turnbull by what was called, not by you, but what was called in the media, the mother of all branch tax. And you You lost pre-selection quite closely, but you stood as an independent. An extraordinary thing happened during the campaign. A letter appeared in the Wentworth Courier from the head of a small monarchist organisation. That person did not take part in the referendum campaign, but it stood aside for other reasons. That letter appeared in the Wentworth Courier advising constitutional monarchists to vote for Mr. Turnbull, not to vote for you, because the whole theme of this was if constitutional monarchists voted for you, it might result, or it could result, in Mark Latham becoming Prime Minister and introducing a republic. And that continued. It became a big feature in the national press, and a major function was held at the Union Club for constitutional monarchists in which you were seriously condemned. This was a very strange intervention. Were you surprised by this?
Well, I don't think it was the ACM, David. It was the Monarchist League. And it was the then head of that league was really acting as a bit of a lone wolf, and he didn't... I think, with respect, the Monarchist League was struggling for relevance, and they saw that as a way of giving it relevance. But the truth is, the Monarchist League has never been the mainstream support for our Constitution and the maintenance of our Constitution. That's always been the ACM under the leadership of people such as yourself and Tony Abbott. So, was I surprised? No, because Mr. Turnbull had a number of tactics which I thought were unfortunate, regrettable, was personally targeted. I'll say no more about that. Did it have an effect? I suppose it had some effect. In the end, I only lost that campaign by about 600 votes. And it was a tough campaign, but I was very, very grateful for the report I received, especially from a number of people in this room, because it was a very, very unusual situation. It was a situation where people thought that the Liberal Party's processes had been usurped and that the processes itself were in question. And that was a position that I believe was correct, and we proceeded on that basis, and we almost got there.
Yes, had the Labor Party run dead, as was expected, I think you would have easily won
I think that's right.
that seat. The next matter is, I believe you have some exciting new news.
Well, yes, nothing like a community initiative. As you all know, the British general election is coming up in December, and I've been inspired to take a little bit of a leadership position by a very dear friend of mine whose mother is Australian, although she's as English as apple pie, but she's running in the elections coming up in December, and I said to her that I'm going to go over and support her. But what we propose to do is to introduce a targeted initiative initially directed at the 1.67 million people entitled to vote, being Britons in Australia, numbering about 1.27 million, and Australians in Britain, according to the Times, in their last note of this, about 400,000. All those numbers go up and down. We're going to give information about where they can vote, what the issues are, and encouraging them to vote, because remember, it's a voluntary system. I consider that to be a more sophisticated political system, a voluntary system, but nonetheless, there it is, and it does require much greater political activity and initiative and commitment in relation to getting the vote out. So that's the first point. The second is we're proposing to launch a dedicated website with information on it on the 16th of November next. The date, the names for the nominations of candidates are published. So that will be also information for people here and in the United Kingdom, especially those with Australian links. And the third is after the close of nominations and consideration of my steering committee, some close friends who have similar thoughts to myself about the need to promote worthy candidates, to give some guidance about how people can contribute in one way or another. So I'm looking forward to that little initiative. I propose to travel to the United Kingdom myself. I propose to speak at Speaker's Corner on Sunday before the election. We're hoping to promote quite a lot of all the Aussies in London to get out and listen and put their points of view, and more importantly, to galvanise the vote, to get them out, to make sure that people in the UK vote on what is, I think, probably one of the most important general elections for many years. For Australia, there's much at stake. National security issues, economic issues, financial issues, diplomatic issues, cultural and political issues. And all of those, in my view, run in our favour if there is to be a positive Brexit vote. So that's the initiative.
And what is the Facebook or the site?
Well, we've registered the site already, but I'm not proposing to launch it, as I said, until the 16th of November. So the name will come up at that point.
Right. So how will people find that out?
I'll be sending out, we'll launch the website that day, and I'll send out emails and make telephone calls to friends.
Good. Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you.